Okay, welcome to Pnimi Satira, Parshas Noach Tashem Pei Beis. As I noted on the first take, that my notes disappeared, so we're going to try to wing it as best as possible. Just a little reflection on Parshas Bereshis and Noach. Every year when we hit these Parshas, you would think that you know the story, and you hear the story for the 100th time, and they're just, familiar story. But by me, it's just exactly the opposite. Every year I get more and more confused. Like, what is going on over here? You know what I'm saying? It's like, just to say the Habereshis, and there's a tree, and there's a fruit, and Adam eats it, and there's a nachash, right? And then the people are bad, and then there's these people living for close to 1,000 years, and then comes a Mabel, and then Noach, and then people are building towers. It's just like, I'm no longer in that third grade mind. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like I have a very hard time relating to it, and it really is what drives me to try to get like a little deeper understanding of what's really going on over here. And that's really this pursuit of Pnimius, that there's something very deep over here. And when you try to hit things deep, obviously you have to try not to hit things too deep, but every year try to maybe unearth another layer of what's going on. And ultimately, what you need to uncover is ultimately Tachas Abriya. You have to understand that these stories, yes, they're stories, but ultimately there are midas over here, and there's struggles going on over here, and tikkunim going on over here, and briyas and churbanis that all are very much part of what goes on in our everyday lives that we really have to contend with. We have to contend with Chet Adam Rishon in our lives. We have to contend with Chet Dor HaMabel, because ultimately that we are the world. Sounds like a song I once heard years ago, right? But we are the world. It's not like that people think that the world has had billions of people, and we're just like a small aspect of it. It's not really what's going on, right? The world is the Matthias of the world, the way we have it, the way it is today. This is it. There's nothing else, right? And it's really what it is. It's an exact duplicate of everything that's gone on until now. Klal Yisrael is not a different Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is the same Klal Yisrael. Who is Klal Yisrael? Klal Yisrael is Atem Karim Adam. We're Adam Arishan, right? We're Nishbas Adam Arishan. So when you hear Adam Arishan, when you learn about Adam Arishan having nisyonis and having and chet and tikkunim and all sorts of things going on in his life, you have to recognize we're Adam, right? And we're here literally connected to that. We're Noach, because Noach is the extension of Adam. We're built on the Avis, right? Avis Mechaltika told us, that's us, right? Told us to not happen to be, something that came from Avis. They are built in. They are a chelik of Avis. We're karda avua. We're literally extensions.
We're not evolving away from something.
Right. And even when you talk about Dor HaMabel, which you think, we have no shaykhs of Dor HaMabel. Arizal tells us otherwise, right? We are Dor HaMabel. Right, that's why we're here. Dor HaMabel got a chance. They got a reset. They all came back in the Dor HaFlaga. They all came back in Anshe Sedoim. They all came back in Mitzrayim. Right, and the Yidden. You know what? The Yidden keep on coming back. Right, the Mesa Midbar. They have to come back. Chorban Bayis Rishon. People get killed. There's a Chorban. They come back for Bayis Sheni. They get destroyed by Sheni. They come back afterwards. There's a Chorban Europe. You know what? We're back, and we're the same exact neshamas. It's time to get it right. You know what I'm saying? So it's just become so relevant to uncover the midas of these tzaddikim, that be'emes, these are the midas that we have inside of us, that we have to really be able to identify and learn from. And besides that, just understanding also that we see to our fleisha geigen, as they say, our gashmis geigen, it's just a very small part of the puzzle. And what we perceive with our neshama and our leiv, when you allow your neshama and leiv to perceive it, you perceive HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Our job is to be in this world, not to see a gashmistic world. Our job is to see in this world, to see a world screaming Ratzon Hashem, right? And that's ultimately, these concepts are brought out by thinking about more pneumistic things, Hashem, Shemus of Hashem, Hanhagas of Hashem, terms that are used for different ilamas that connect us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, different spheres that we talk about, Chachma, Bina, Das, etc., Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchus, right, which really corresponds to a connection, a direct connection all the way up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not really up, but we'll call it up all the way up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right down here, and the connection is real. So maybe I'll just start saying something very pashut. I'll start with a story, and what this story has to do with Parshas Noach, at least the Anhag of Noach. I was talking to I saw Shragim over Talmidim over before Sukkot, and we have one order a year we send out to an out-of-town place, and this year I called the guy that I get supplies from, and I told him, do me a favor, just take care of it for me. I tell him what I need. We need X amount of esrogim, X amount of lulavim, and we send them rings to tie up the lulav. 3 rings per set, 40 sets. I need you to get me 120 rings, and things have to be there in a timely fashion because they're shipping it, out of state. And this is an order that Rabbi Fisher was filling for 40 years, and we still have it later. The shul is still not as vibrant as it used to be, but so the guy gets the whole order ready. He says it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. The order's going out. He doesn't have rings. He says, where am I going to get rings from? 9 o'clock in the morning. Because he has kids. This guy that I use, he has kids that come to his shop and they help him bind up and they make rings. But they come at night after school, afternoon after school, and this is in the morning. He walks to the bagel hole for breakfast, and a little kid comes over to him who knows that he hires a bunch of 12, 13, 14-year-olds. He says, "Can I work for you?" So he says, "Yeah, sure." I go, well, what are you good at? He says, I know how to make rings. He says, "You're hired." He says, "Great." He says, "You know what? I just made 120 rings at home."
Oh my gosh.
He says, "Here's $20. Bring him in." he took the rings, and he sent them out. So I was like amazing story, right?
Wow.
It like knocks your socks off. This story. It's like an amazing story. You're like, wow, what hashgacha pratis, right? and so I was thinking, but you're so disballed by 120 stupid rings. You know what I'm saying? A $20. Whatever, transaction over here. We're going to mark it up to $30. So it's a $30 transaction, And, but at the end of the day, you're nispal by how everything aligned. And I was thinking like this, you know what? Your liver has a little too much bile in it, right? About 0.000, I don't know, milligrams of bile in it that has to get out to be secreted into your gallbladder, right? And amazing, right? That point, exactly what needs to be taken out, and exactly the brain cell that has to transmit, to my mouth now to speak, and this we're not blown away from. That it's the darkest. There's such darkistic things going on every day in our lives. You know what I'm saying? And this isn't only going on in our brain and in our heart and all our organs. It's going on in your wife's body, in your children's body. It's going on in the world around you. The trees aren't just plopping on your head. Everything's working. And that all we take for granted. We trust that HaKadosh Baruch Hu to take care of it. And this is an Indian. When it comes to this, we have a certain tmimus. Tmimus, right? We don't look at things too deeply. Yeah, it works. I trust that it works. Hashem's going to take care of it. We're ma'aminim. We trust it's going to be Hashem going to continue taking care. Right? When it comes to bigger things, right? Then already Hashem needs our help, right? You have to find a house to flip, a house to rent. Right? All these things are. This is something that I have to schwitz and fret and be nervous over, because this is in our mind much more complicated than the trillions of transactions going on in your body at any given time, and everybody who's very important to you in your life, and But ultimately, what is the ultimate avoid of avoid of a yid? Tamim tiyeh im Hashem lekecha. That's the ultimate tachlis of every yid's avodah, right? To get this madrega of tmimus, and this is the madrega that Noach was described, right? That tamim tiyeh is what the lashon of tmimus is. Hisalech lefanai beheye samim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram Avinu, right? Es halakim hisalech Noach, right? Noach ishak tam haya imdayis. Es halakim hisalech Noach. Tmimus is pashut your plain operating system, right? It's not this high level, cheshbonis you're taking apart a sugya, and there's many parts of avodas Hashem which is very teef and very sophisticated. Let's say. What's tmimus? Tmimus is exactly the opposite of sophistication. A person just totally falazich on a Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? Lashon Rashi in Parshas Shoftim and Tam Tia Im Hashem Lekecha is like sachkar acharei asidais, right? You're not worried about the future. The Lashon of Rashi is, I don't have a dvarim over here, but the Lashon of Rashi is that everything that Kadosh Baruch Hu provides a person you're perfectly comfortable with, and you're perfectly, I could follow on the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the Indian of Tmim is Pashut, the most basic level of operation is totally given over to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Just like the story sort of brought it out, that we missed out on so much Tmimus that we naturally have, and if you could take that, if you could look at the Tmimus that we naturally have already, right, and apply that to the rest of our life where we don't naturally have it, but at least you have a place to start applying it from. You live with Tmimus, right? There's amazing things going on, and you just, the Tmimus, yes, Hashem's going to take care. And if we apply that Tmimus to the rest of our lives, that is the goal of a tzaddik. Let's just talk about Noach a little bit on a more sophisticated level. I'll start off with a shtickle from the Imrei Noam. Let me just try to recall exactly the way he says. He says it as Noach. Who is Noach? What is Noach? Right? Noach is literally the bridge from Adam to the world as we know it today. That's Noach. That's who he is, right? Everything past Noach is gone. Noach is the connector. Who's Noach built on? There are three tzaddikim that Noach is built on. Noach's built on Yered, Chanoich, and Mesushalach. Those are the three tzaddikim. That was his great-grandfather, grandfather, great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, grandfather. Okay, those are the three tzaddikim that he's directly connected to. They all expressed a Gvista Shleimus. Mr. Shalach is famous as being the longest living man. How long did he live? He lived 969 years. The ultimate that a man could live is 1,000 years. Okay, that's the ultimate. Nowadays we talk about the ultimate is 120 years. Back in the day, 1,000 was a magic number, right? Adam was supposed to live the magic 1,000 years. He lived 930, right? Everyone knows that he gave 70 years to David HaMelech. David was supposed to be a Nephil. He got 70 years from Adam Rishon.
There are others that live more than 1,000.
Maybe Al Pi Medrash, not
explicitly.
Yeah. Al Pi Medrash, yeah. Yered and Mr. Shalach lived 969 years, and Yered, who was his grandfather, Yered Chanoich Mr. Shalach, lived 962 years. Okay, they were the closest to Shleimus, closest to 1,000 years. State, I believe it's a Zohar. I saw brought down Sefer Asar Mamares from the Ramami Pano. He says not only did David HaMelech get 70 years from Adam Rishon, he got 70 years from Yered Chanoich and Mr. Shalach. But they were Adam HaShalems. They should have lived 1,000 years. Yered gave up 38 years off his cheshbon. Mr. Shalach gave up 31 years off his cheshbon. And Chanoich, who was in the middle, Chanoich lived, he ended up leaving, he left the world, right? He went up to the Shemayim, he lived 365 years. His shleimus was 365 years. Why is his shleimus 365 years? Because he ended up being the Sar HaOlam. He went up to be, Rashi says, Matat Sar Pnim. He went up to be the Sar Pnim, right? Whatever Sar Pnim means. He referred to as Sar HaOlam. He is in charge of the Malachim in Olam HaYetzira, I believe it is. Okay, one of the Olamas. In as much he's in the Malach world, his shleimus is 365, which is connected 365 days of the year. He was nifter in year 365. He should have lived out the year. He gave 1 year to David HaMelech. So if you do the math, 31 plus 38 plus 1 equals 70. Okay, that's David HaMelech's, another source of David HaMelech's 70 years. There is a third source of David HaMelech's 70 years, which comes from the Avos. Avram lived 175 years. He was supposed to live 180 years. He died 5 years early. So you shouldn't see Esav going off the derech. That's what we know of in Pirashi and Chumash. But Al Pi this, he gave up 5 years for David HaMelech. Yaakov was supposed to live the same amount of years as Avram. He lived 147 years. He should have lived one for 75.
Minus 33.
Minus 47 to 75 is going to get to 28. So we're at 33 now.
Because from the words that he said to Parai, Ma'at V'Royim.
Yeah.
He lost 22.
How many was that?
He lost 22 years.
That was 22?
No, sorry.
It was 30
Well,
something.
We'll get you to 30. We'll get you to what I just say. I just told you 28.
Oh.
I mean, what if he's getting to 175? You saying?
I'm just trying to remember that.
It could be the other Ben
Right,
Joshim.
whatever.
So Yaakov gave him 28, and Yitzchak state he didn't have any years to give up because he bemis died by Daked already. So his whole existence was only very quasi Olam Hazedek anyway. So he didn't really have any Olam Hazed to share. Yosef stood in for Yitzchak. He was supposed to live as long as Yaakov. He lived 110 instead of 147. 37, 28 plus 5 should get you to our magic number of 70. Okay, and to explain that David HaMelech, or ultimately Adam HaRishon, who so desperately needed David for his tikkun, right? So he was offering to give years for David, but he needed 2 arevim on this. He needed 2 guarantors. Okay, no, you have to. It wasn't medayik exactly how the guarantors worked, but they all 3 paired together to cement David HaMelech's role. Who's David HaMelech, and where does Noach fit into this? Noach is the connection of Adam ultimately to David. That's ultimately the view that Noach is in this world. Let's just tell you, getting to the Imrei Noam. Imrei Noam says as that Noach, Eila told us Noach. Noach, ish tzaddik, we just count the time it says Noach. Eila told us Noach ish tzaddik, tam hayim b'dareis, vel kim halch Noach, v'ayel Noach. 4 times Noach. Sagt Imrei Noam that 4 times Noach is Bigamatria 232. Okay? You should already know what the number 232 is from previous year, but 232 is the shleimus of all the Ilamis. Okay? To get to Ilam Hazeh, right, obviously Ilamis go out in case, but Be'ikr we talk about 4 Ilamis. Ilam Hazeh is Ilam Hasiya, and the 3 Ilamis above this. Keneged the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud is the highest Ilam, Hey Rishayna Vav, and Kei. Hey Achrein is Ilam Hazeh. Every Ilam has a Shem Hashem that corresponds to that Olam. The Shemus of Hashem has the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, but you could spell Yud Kei Vav Kei many different ways. And the 4 basic ways of spelling Yud Kei Vav Kei is, when you write it out, Yud is the Yud above and the Daled, Kei is Kei Yud, right? Or Hey could be spelled Kei Yud, Kei Aleph, and Kei Kei. And changing that hey ultimately is what gives you different spellings and different matches. When you write all the heys with a yud and you put a yud inside the vav yud vav, right? Vav could be vav yud vav, vav aleph vav, and vav vav, right? So you end up with four ways to write Shem Hashem be'ikr, and that corresponds to the 4 Ilamas. The 4 ways to write Shem Hashem is, the first one is Yud Kei Vav Kei with Yud, it's match 72. The next one is similar to that, it's 63. The The next one is writing Hashem with olives is 45, and the last one is writing Hashem with Hayes, Yud, KK, Vav Vav. KK is 52. That is the shleimus of the entire bria, and these are kavanas that anyone that's davening with any kavanas is constantly being exposed to these concepts of four. If you want to know in davening, right, when you say your karbonas, you're mimachavin aylam asiyah. Karbonas is action in this world, asiyah, right? When you get to Psukkah de Zimra, you move up a level, right? You're in the aylam above, right? It's aylam hayitzira. You get to Birchas Kriya Shema, you had Olam Habriya, and Shemay Nesei, you're standing in Hashem's house, highest point, Atzilus. Okay? So, Be'emes is these concepts are anyone that gets a good sitter, will see these things are just, this is not like sight. It's just, you just have to be exposed to these inyanim to recognize that we're connecting to the highest level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What level? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Echad, and that's why we have to be very careful when you talk about these things. But we're connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in ways that you can't imagine, right? Davening, like we said many times, is not standing in Olam Hazeh, because you just went all the way up the ladder to Olam Hatzilas, right? The famous Arizal we said 1,000,000 times. Rabbi Lezer said, Kashata Oim Lispalo Da Lifnei Miata Oimed. When you're davening, you should know who you're standing in front of. So everyone else, daven to Hashem. Where else am I davening? No, da'alef ne'miyata oimed. You know where you're standing. You're not just talking to Hashem from here on earth, right? You've been transported. You've been teleported, right? And not only that, the remez of lifnei mi is you're holding by Yud all the way up in Atzilus, and that's his chiddush. We know it from him. Right, Rabbi Lezer had Rachmanas on us to Migal this side that davening is leaving this world, not only leaving this world, moving up one madrega, it moves you up all the way to the highest madrega they can imagine. And that's what Noach is. Noach is this connector. He connects the highest levels of ruchnius which were in the world by Bria, right? And ultimately every chorban is, you think, oh, ayvei a chorban, right? Ayvei a chorban. That's how we look at it. It's like, you're sitting there and she'll, don't eat from the apple, you know what I'm saying? Would you stop stealing or they're going to be a marble, you know what I'm saying? I told you not to do that, but ultimately, what's really going on is Bria starts off with these high-level people, Yared, Mr. Shalach, and Chanoich, that living 1,000 years, which means their Olam is a different Olam, right? They're a different Olam. It's not where we are, they're a different Olam. And all that is coming down to a world that we live in that we need to be masakin all the way down here. How does that happen? This chorban, you build a new island. A chorban, you build a new island. Every chorban it brings you to a new island exactly where you need to be. So to think that you're ever in a b'di'eva digamatzev is a mistake. And that's what Noach is. Noach is that connection between this original island, which is described as, say, chachma, right? Or we'll say Shem Ayin Beis, all the way down, Ayin Beis, Hamach Gimel, Mem Hey, Ben, all the way down to Olam Hazeh Mamish. That's Noach's point. He is, what's the lashon? Vayocha Noach Ish Adama, right? He becomes Ish Adama, right? What's Noach's biggest chiddush? Noach was misaken klei machresha, right? He was misaken. He's misaken the plow, right? To take care of the chet of Adam Marisha and of Kaitz V'Dar Tatzmiach. He wasn't an inventor. He had a role to play, that he was here on the Rishon Beit Chorban. The world is in a new place now. You know what? Time to get to work. We're going to be Masakachet on the Rishon. So Klei Machresha, yes, it could have very well been a piece of metal with 4 prongs coming out of it, but ultimately what it was greater. He was showing an avoid in this new world. And that's the Indian of Masak Klei Machresha, just digging into Olam Asiyah, so really just don't be afraid to get down into the world you're in. I'm saying this is where you're here to get involved. The famous story with the Vilna Gaon. The Dubna Magid used to come visit the Gaon every once in a while, and he would give him Musar. And the Vilna Gaon loved the Dubna Magid's Musar. They have letters. The Dubna Magid, the Gaon wrote to the Dubna Magid, begging him, please come. You haven't been here in 9 years. I need you to come lift my spirits. Come give me some Musar, And the Dubna Magid would come and give him Musar, and he would tell him, Mishalim. And the Mechaya, the guy, the guy tells him, "Give me some mussar." He says, "You want mussar? He'll tell you mussar." He says, "You think it's a big deal to beat a Vilna guy and sitting here in your room with the window shades drawn, with a candle 24 hours a day, with not having said boo to a single human being in 8 years? And who could be a Vilna guy if you do that?" He says the kunst is to go out into the world and take on the world and do something in this Fadarban belt. There's no kunst what you're doing. The guy told him back, "I'm not looking for any kunsim." You know what I'm saying? That was the guy's answer back. The guy in Kafi, who he was, he felt his tikkunim were going to be, in his, literally, the guy he would put paper over his windows. He didn't want any sunlight in. He didn't want no night. He didn't want no day. He had a candle, window, shades drawn, and that was, he was totally not in this island. But be'emes, that's the guy's avay. The guy was a malach. They say that the Sab told Chassam Sofer that his Rebbe and Rav Nosson Adler was a malach. He says, "It's noch nicht gewen a malach as wie mein Rebbe and Rav Nosson Adler." It's I think we're greater than malachim. But ultimately, the Isha Dama, Klal Yisrael, collectively has to get into this world and be misaga. That's what Noach. Noach is Isha Dama, misaga machresha, and Noach is this bechina that he's kail all the ilamis. And he brings from the highest level down to this world to literally set up a world to be a world where we do the avodah that we need to do. Noach is referred to as Midas HaYisod, this great connector. Okay, we know Midas HaYisod is this great connector, and I saw in the Sefer it says Noach is Matchia Mem Nun Beis, which is Olam Asiyah. We said that's the lowest Olam, and Vav on top of that, which is Vav is the Midas HaYisod, right? The Vav is the Yisod is the end of the Is Vav in Shem Havai. We said this many times. So Noach is that connector of Midas HaYisod to Olam Hazeh. Midas HaYisod, the great funnel of all the hashpahs and Olamas on top of this world. I was just thinking that just the Ramazim that is said about David HaMelech, I'll just furious with this Remez, maybe Chiddush, maybe someone says it. David HaMelech talked about where he's come from, right? Kiger noichi imach toshav k'chol avaysai, and what I said over the Asar Mamaris, he says Kiger noichi imach the toshav k'chol avaysai. He says I'm a ger, I'm a toshav. What does he mean? He's a ger, he's a toshav. He says my 70 years that I have mebechinas the avos, I'm a ger because avos were gerim because they're bnei avodah zara. So right, Kiger noichi imach toshav k'chol avaysai because I also have ayin shanim midin toshav from Yered, Chanoich, and Mr. Shalach. And there's a pasuk. The pasuk says, Uvechet yechemasni imi, describing, talks about his conception, where he's come from, his source. Uvechet yechemasni imi, my mother conceived me in chet, whatever he means, that there's some sort of chesaron in taiva. Uvechet yechemasni imi. Yechemasni imi is Yechemasni is Rashi Tevis, Yered, Chanoich, Mrs. Shalach. No. Tikkun Nafshais Yisrael. That's what it says, Through this comes Tikkun Nafshais, because this is ultimately Nafshais Yisrael is Klal Yisrael in Bechin of Malchus and in David HaMelech. So ultimately David is sourced in Yered Chanech Mr. Shalach. We know that we learn Parshas Noach is that connected to David, right? I'm sure you could find connection to Noach to David, but my connection was Noach B'Zegamachia, right? Yered, the Rosh Tevis of Yered, Mr. Shalach. Chanoich is B'Gematria 58, which is B'Gematria Noach. That Noach is Be'emes. He's that great connector of Yisod to Malchus, ultimately to David HaMelech, through Yered Chanoich and Mr. Shalach. There's another pasuk that said. This pasuk I can't remember after an ounce of wine, but Bekitzer also another pasuk where David describes Haydieni Kitzai Haidieni Mechayai Haidieni. Okay, so this will be in my mind now. Okay. Anyway, Bekitzer, this is a lesson of Noach. That Noach lives in a Welt of Churban, right? And he takes it on and recognizes that he's here to be a big connector between the previous Dairis and the Dairis Habayim, and then we all have to recognize that we're not here for ourselves. We're here as part of a very big picture. We're a link in the chain that we're not a new Dar. We're a link in an old chain, and Be'ez Hashem we're going to be the last link in this chain. This Abiyas Goel Tzedek B'Meira, and we should be inspired to recognize that we're connected. We have ability of bridging Shemayim and Aretz, and being tzaddikim tamimim, Yisach Lefanei V'Heyatam Be'ez Hashem.